25 years ago this month was a time when I think the WWE changed forever. November 9th of 97, Molson Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It was a main event that was 18 months in the making. It was a match that nobody ever thought they would see again, considering the rivalry that went on, the personal rivalry, the backstage rivalry. But lo and behold, here it was, big money match, Tomas. And Survivor Series 1997 was the setting.
Yeah, 25 years later, and this is still the most controversial main event in professional wrestling history.
Yep.
What can we say about the Montreal Screwjob that already hasn't been said?
Bro,
I don't think there is anything that we can say that hasn't been said, but we can definitely give our take on it. It's
totally. Everybody's been asking for our takes, which is fascinating.
Yeah. If there's two subjects in wrestling that will never stop being talked about, it's this and WWE versus WCW and how WWE won the war. There's been a million, the very first wrestling book I ever read was The Rise and Fall of WCW by Brian Alvarez, by the way. Didn't even know that as a kid or as a teenager.
Great book. It's a great book.
My cousin, who I reconnected with through wrestling, he got that for me for my birthday. And he said, "This is your quintessential pro wrestling textbook." And it had everything. It had all the ratings. It had all the behind the scenes stories of why they did what they did. I feel like you could write a book or at least do a documentary on the real side of the Montreal Screwjob. I don't want to see WWE's take on the Screwjob because they're just going to twist words and put it into their own narrative. I want to see, just a whole documentary based on, and I know where you're going with this, Wrestling with Shadows, the Bret Hart documentary, which is, it could be the greatest
so fascinating
documentary in the history of forever.
Yeah, I've watched that documentary.
I haven't watched it since I was.
Believe it or not, I watched that documentary for the first time last week, and every wrestling fan was telling me to watch it, and I was just fascinated by it because it accidentally turned into like a behind-the-scenes look at the Montreal Screwjob, because that was meant to be like, okay, we're gonna document Bret's final days with the World Wrestling Federation, and Bret didn't want to leave. Like, it's well documented. Yeah. Bret did not want to leave the WWF out of loyalty to Vince McMahon. But it turned into this really it turned into this really interesting, like, I don't want to call it a soap opera. Yeah. It's like it's
a commentary.
Yeah. It's let's just say for now, it's an incident that did not need to happen, but we will give our take on it when we get to this main event here.
Yeah,
but
we are going to be, honestly, this podcast is for the Montreal Screwjob. Yeah, there's a couple other matches here that we're going to talk about. Nothing really to write home about on this pay-per-view. If the Montreal Screwjob did not happen, this would be, just your average WWF pay-per-view. But what we will preface this with is where WWF was at this point in history. It's 1997. WCW is well established on the map. And we will say, in that time, if you know your wrestling history, there were no ironclad contracts. So you look at, nowadays, you look at John Moxley, who just signed a 5-year deal with AEW, saying, unless we give permission, you are not going to go wrestle for other. I guess that's not a good example. Or a guy like Kevin Owens, who just re-signed with the WWE, and his contract saying, you will only wrestle for WWE and WWE only, unless given special permission, like we're seeing now with like Shinsuke Nakamura. Back in the day, if wrestlers were in kind of like these loose contracts, and if somebody came up to them with a better deal, they could snatch them away. And the biggest examples would be Hulk Hogan in 1994 or 5. 94, yeah, he left the WWF in 94 and kind of came onto the scene shortly after that. Macho Man Randy Savage. And then the final, you want to talk about other stars like Brutus the Barber Beefcake, not really a star, but still a name in WWF.
The Outsiders.
Ric Flair, who was still synonymous with WCW, but, made his way back to WWF and then back to WCW because he got bought out. And then the final nails in the coffin were the two biggest stars that Vince had left in the company, Kevin Nash Diesel and Scott Hall Razor Ramon. Once they left, Vince was really backed into a corner. We talked about this before. Undertaker was, he was a big star, but not on the level of a Diesel or a Ramon. Mankind, that Vince didn't know that he could draw yet. Shawn Michaels was his biggest heel in the company. Shawn Michaels being the biggest heel and Undertaker being the biggest face. And then you have guys like Triple H who wasn't there yet. The Rock was still in the Nation of Domination. Stone Cold Steve Austin was getting there, but take a year prior, he was still the ringmaster. Vince was really backed into a corner. So when we get to the main event, we're not playing devil's advocate. We are not taking Vince's side in this argument.
Absolutely not.
Really like a trapped animal at this point when one of his biggest stars in the company was on his way out the door too.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail right on the head, man. His three biggest stars, Taker, Shawn, and Bret. Shawn and Bret was the money match, and Vince knew that, but those two hated each other's guts. And we'll get more into that background, but
yeah.
Vince had plucked Big Van Vader from WCW, but Vader was not on the level of a Shawn or a Bret or a yeah.
No.
Rest in peace, Vader. But like
when you lose Hogan, Savage, Diesel,
all of them,
and now Bret, like all of them are going to WCW because Ted Turner had the bigger checkbook. He was
Mr. Perfect,
shilling money out. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. The list goes on and on about all these stars that, and Vince is no saint either. His father plucked these stars. He killed the territories. Hulk Hogan, a lot of people don't know, was an AWA guy. But when Hogan was shown the money by Vince Sr., of course Hogan was going to go where the money went. And, Vince Sr. sucked the territories dry.
And what's fascinating about that?
Star,
Vince Jr. plucked Stampede Wrestling out from Stu Hart's hands. And along with it came the entire Hart dynasty. Nothing to do with Tyson Kidd or David Hart Smith at this point, of course, but his big star coming out of Stampede Wrestling was Bret the Hitman Hart himself. And Bret was pretty much molded to be Vince's next big babyface. So once Hogan was out the door, Hogan wasn't willing to put Bret over. But Bret was his face in the company.
You know the Hart family.
Yeah.
The Harts, they stick together. Bret, Owen, Neidhart, the Bulldog, all stuck together, and they left the territories to go to WWF. It's a crazy time in wrestling, and it's one of the best times in wrestling. And, you look at this card and you see that there are some somewhat stars on here, but then you got a bunch of jobbers and no one that can compete with DDP, Sting, Nash, Hogan, the the NWO was already blowing up in WCW, the most popular faction in professional wrestling history. Yes, I said it, even more popular than D-Generation X, was taking the world by storm in WCW. And, you stack that with, the mid-card that they have, the cruiserweights are blowing up. You got Jericho and Benoit and Malenko and Eddie and Rey Mysterio. And WCW was stacked. And for the longest time, they were putting on the better product. And not to exclude Goldberg and Sting and all the other the WCW grown guys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. But exactly to your point, this card, aside from like a few big matches here, I mean, just look at this card. Like, you could look at it in the description box. I always do. But we're live from the Molson Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. We're on, and there are four 4-on-4 traditional Survivor Series matches on this card. The first of which are the Headbangers and the new Blackjacks against the Godwinns and a very young New Age Outlaws who are not members of DX by this point. Very, very odd seeing them come out with the Godwinns.
Very freshly formed Road Dogg Jesse James and Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn was just going by badass. Road Dogg hadn't earned his second G yet. Even on commentary, they're saying, Road Dogg and his new tag team partner, Billy Gunn. This is really the origins of New Age Outlaws. And if there's one thing you didn't know about the Outlaws, is that they were heels, but the fans loved them so much that they couldn't help be booked as semi-baby faces. But you even listen to their promo coming out to the ring, they're not good guys.
No, not at all. Not at all. And the gimmick is that they beat the Headbangers over the head with their own beatbox, which I guess was their gimmick because they were heavy metal geeks. And the Headbangers come out, and their partners are the rough and tough Blackjacks of Barry Windham and John Layfield, better known to us as Bradshaw. This match was not good. It was not a good way to start the show.
No.
The structure of this thing, like, this went 15 minutes. It felt like it went for 15 hours, man. I'm sorry. This was not good wrestling. Billy Gunn and
very slow pace,
and they were a brand new team. Like,
exactly, like Billy Gunn was probably the best worker in this match. You have the Godwinns, who are slow and boring. You have the Headbangers that are a gimmick. You have, we praised Bradshaw on the Judgment Day podcast, but oh my gosh, like, he's a good character. He's a good worker. He's stiff, but other than that, dude never really hit his peak when it came to body shape. He got into good shape in the APA, and then I remember me and my dad would make fun of JBL in like 2007, 2008, saying like, this guy, he does not look good without a shirt.
No, not at all. But let's just say that Bradshaw definitely got better, and he was teamed up with Barry Windham, who unfortunately was out of his prime. This is a guy who was beating up Lex Luger in WCW in the early 90s. You know what I mean? So it's a recipe like this just does not lead to a good match. I gave this a 1.5 stars. The Outlaws survive. The eliminations came.
Yeah, and again, in these old school Survivor Series, people need to understand that almost every single match was a traditional Survivor Series match.
Almost.
Even back then, like a little bloated. Yeah, a little bloated. And even in the early Survivor Series days, every single match was a traditional 4-on-4 until it evolved into the 5-on-5. And let's just say I'm glad I grew up in an era where we had 2, maybe 3 of these on a show. I think 3 was even pushing it. I'm in the minority. I did not like when they did the tag team one in 2018, 2017. I thought that was too much.
Too bloated.
I thought
too bloated.
The 2019 one. Yeah, the 2019 one was oversaturated to triple threats because they added the NXT element in there. When you have too much of the same match on one show, it definitely overstays its welcome very easily. And I think that's, with the exception of one of these, maybe 2. There's 2 bad ones, and there's 2 bad ones, a decent one, and a good one. But it sucks that we had to sit through some shit before we got to the decent ones.
Good Lord. Yeah, this was the crowd absolutely dead for everything these guys were doing. You could, Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg, you could kind of tell that they were catching on, and the booking at least was correct in having them be the survivors because they were the team on the rise. They would beat Thrasher, I believe, at the end with Daddy Ass's finisher.
But back to my point about the Outlaws being bad, but they were being cheered. But you look at this match, and who are you going to cheer for? The cool rebels, the New Age Outlaws, or the fucking geeks, the Headbangers, or these dweebs, the new Blackjacks? Like, who would you rather cheer for?
Or these terrible Godwinn people? Like, come on, man.
Exactly. It's just like, you got them wearing conservative shirts. I know it's called the Confederate flag. I call it the conservative flag. Fight me.
Brutal opener. Brutal opener, man. But man, these undercard matches seem like afterthoughts when you think about this show. But believe it or not,
nobody remembers the undercard to this show.
This next match is even.
Yeah, and if these 2 matches aren't proof of how depleted the roster was in WWF, how WCW literally sucked all the talent out of WWF, we have the Truth Commission, the Jackal, the Interrogator, Sniper and Recon versus the Disciples of the Apocalypse, Crush, Chains, 8-Ball, and Skull. Who the fuck are any of these guys?
I knew who the DOA were because I had they were a big part of the 1998 Royal Rumble, which is a VHS that I watched quite a bit when I was younger, and I was like, who the hell are these DOA guys? The DOA is a biker stable putting on terrible matches. That's pretty much all they were. Their leader was Crush, Brian Adams, the late Brian Adams. Chains, who did not fare well in the Federation, and Skull and 8-Ball, who were the Harris twins, infamously in Vince Russo's WCW. Just
which
listing
is
off.
crazy considering that they would just jump ship to WCW like what, a year later, and they wouldn't do any better there either.
Yeah, the Truth Commission
God,
is not much better. Recon would later on become Bull Buchanan, which floored me looking at him. Sniper
be squared.
Yeah. The Jackal, who is like the Jackal Boy, Jack Perry, Jungle Boy, but except he's a little bit more, built. The Interrogator was the big star of this match, though. Kurgan the Interrogator, who would later go on to be this big action movie star, believe it or not. And I listed off his filmography to Tomas, and he was floored when I looked at it. 300, Sherlock Holmes, and get this, Deadpool 2. Like, this guy's done pretty well for himself since leaving the Federation. Pretty darn well.
I now need to go back and watch all those movies again and see where I can point him out. I'm pretty sure he was there. I just don't remember it. But yeah,
terrible match though.
The Interrogator. Yeah. The one shining thing I will say about this is that the Interrogator was booked very well. He eliminated most of the DOA, and after the Jackal got eliminated, he went and did commentary. What kind of geek does that?
What kind of a geek does commentary in the middle of an I Quit match? It's like, I could ask you the same question. But at least
the
was
Interrogator goes on a tear. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was absolutely destroying everyone on the DOA, and he ended up being the sole survivor. And you know what? I actually thought he was pretty impressive. He was hitting big guy stuff, big boots, clotheslines, sidewalk slams, being what a big guy should be in the Federation. And then after this match, I couldn't help but wonder, why did they turn this guy into a joke? He actually could have been something.
But you got to remember, Vince McMahon was booking the show, and he always did this with the big brutes. Kurgan, Vladimir Kozlov, Tenzai, Brodus Clay. I could go on and on with the big dudes that Vince took seriously for a bit and then turned them into dancing fools. The Great Khali is another one. I believe Kurgan is better than the Great Khali.
None of those guys are necessarily. Yeah, and you take a guy like Albert, who was a pretty decent wrestler and pretty underappreciated, especially in our retrospective right now. He goes to Japan, and then he goes out of his way to leave Japan and come back to WWE, and they turn him into a fucking joke. No. Thank God he's a head trainer at NXT now, because if I was him, I would have left a long time ago. But hey, an easy paycheck is an easy paycheck.
Yep, you'll take it, right? Of course, your sole survivor is the Interrogator after he pins Bryan Adams with a sidewalk slam. This match went 10 minutes, and the most acrobatic move in it was a bulldog. Take that with what you will, my friends. This was not good.
I'll give it 2 stars because
2 stars.
Honestly,
what?
One of those stars goes to how impressive Kurgan was. I was actually very impressed with his line of offense and how strongly he was booked in this match. Again, why? I'm not saying he could have moved on and been the next Undertaker, but they could have made him a solid mid-carder. He could have been something.
Yeah, well, in hindsight, it's not a good match. Not a very good match, but I see where you're going with that. Another Survivor Series match on the docket here.
And
this is
where shit gets weird.
This is so weird. So you have Team USA, which is comprised of team captain Vader, Goldust, Marvelous Marc Mero, and the debuting Steve Blackman, whose gimmick is he's a fan who on the Go Home Raw jumps the barricade and attacks the Hart Foundation, and suddenly he has a contract. Somehow he's not sitting in jail, arrested, with a martial arts kick to his name.
Yeah. And WWF is not concerned whatsoever that if this guy gets hurt in this match, they could get sued for millions. Oh, I mean, not millions, because whatever WWF was worth at that point, probably 2 McChicken sandwiches and whatever change I have in my pocket.
Good Lord, man. They enter the arena to Kurt Angle's theme song. This was so
How
bizarre.
Weird is that?
Yeah, no, Tomas was like, Kurt Angle's theme song? What happened? Did the announcer hit the wrong button? Like...
And then it gets even weirder because...
Oh, God.
Remember, this is Vince's WWF we're talking about. Team USA is supposed to be your baby faces, and Team Canada is supposed to be your heels, and they're in Montreal.
And even worse, Team Canada is comprised of the British Bulldog, You see where I'm going with this? The British Bulldog on Team Canada, Jim Neidhart, Doug Furness, and Phil LaFon. There was only one Canadian out of 4 people on Team Canada. Phil LaFon. That was it. Come on, guys.
Again, Vince's weird hatred towards Canadians. I don't get it.
That's probably why he screwed a Canadian later in the show. But anyway, not gonna bury the lead there. This was a decent match, I suppose. It was, yeah,
Steve went a little long.
Steve Blackman gets himself counted out like a fucking dweeb, like.
Because that's how you protect people, apparently.
I get it. He just debuted, and you don't want him pinned. You want the Team Canada to win, but
maybe you don't make his first match such a high-profile match when they're in such a passionate country. So passionate to the point that they had a French-Canadian ring announcer announce the entire show. Just so you know, it was weird because Vince would pander to Canadians, but he had this weird, like, again, like we talked about it before, this weird hatred for them.
Yeah. Another thing that they were building up is this weird rivalry that Vader would have with Goldust going into 1998. Goldust, a very eccentric character, which I'm saying that in the most mildest of terms.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Especially weird going into 1998. He would eventually become the artist formerly known as Goldust. And his face,
that's where shit got weird.
His face paint had an FU on it, and on the back of his head it said "Alive Again." Dustin Rhodes tried throwing ideas at the wall. A very young Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah, and then it got weird, and then he's wearing nightgowns, and he's wearing an afro, and we've talked about WrestleMania already. I'd rather not revisit that, but Goldust walks out on his team, and JR is screaming at him, saying, "You're walking out on your team. You're walking out on your country. Calm down, JR. It's not
calm down." The other team has a British person, an American, 2 American people actually, and a Canadian guy. So, Team Canada, not so much Team Canada.
Bulldog. He's part of that Hart family. Then he's Canadian.
Oh my God! Don't remind me. It does come down to Bulldog and Vader, who I believe were the 2 best workers in this match. And this is a better match because it has a couple of experienced big guys like these 2 to carry it. And it came down to the right people. Bulldog hits some very impressive moves on Vader and pins him. And Bulldog is your sole survivor. The right team went over in the Molson Center.
Yeah, because again, you're in Canada where Bulldog is very respected. If you didn't have him go over, this crowd would have rioted before the main event where they actually rioted.
You just can't help it.
And this was decent. It was better than the other 2 matches, but
2.5.
I'm not saying a lot. I'll give it 2.5. It was just so weird, so weirdly booked from start to finish.
Little too weird.
It's like you look at it, and it was one of those things that the longer you look at it, the weirder it gets.
Yeah, very much so. Speaking of weird characters, we have a big one coming up next.
Yeah,
couple of big ones actually.
Next up is Kane versus Mankind. This is kind of this is in the middle of Kane and Undertaker's feud. Undertaker is in his phase of "I will not fight my brother." He refuses to fight Kane, even though Kane has been terrorizing the Undertaker ever since he debuted at Bad Blood in that first ever Hell in a Cell match.
Yes,
and
sir.
Since Undertaker's not going to find him, Mick Foley is stepping up to the plate, and he's bringing his Mankind character. He cuts an excellent promo backstage before this match.
So good, man. Mick Foley is a diamond in the rough. He cuts his promo. He goes from one of the big parts of the build of this match is Kane beating the crap out of Dude Love on the Raw beforehand, and then Mankind coming out to avenge his friend, Dude Love. Dude is pretty cool. I have to go and fight Kane now. I'm working on it. But this was basically, first of all, very, very weird to see the match take place fully in red light. Brought me some very, very chilling memories of sitting live in Sacramento and watching The Fiend get hammered by Seth Rollins. Fuck that match.
This was very, very early in Kane's run, so they were still booking
Literally.
Kane as this unstoppable monster. And you know
Kane's
what?
Kane's
If there's
first
anyone
official
you should
Kane's first official WWF match on record, by the way. Sorry to cut you off, but just had to hammer that in.
No, you're
But
good. But if there's any person you need to book against someone that you're trying to put off as an unstoppable monster, it's the human crash test dummy himself, Mankind. And to say that Mankind bumped for Kane is a fucking understatement.
Oh, God, man. Kane was throwing him all over the place. The match starts outside the ring in earnest. Kane throws Mankind as hard as he freaking can into the steel stairs. Not once, but twice. And I'm like, how is this dude not dead at this point?
Mick Foley has to be the bravest wrestler in history because this guy, we talk about all the crazy bumps he's taken. We talk about him getting thrown knees first into the steel steps and him flipping over every single time. Every single time he's done that, every single time he's taken a flat back bump onto concrete.
Yes.
They actually did a health update on Mick Foley where he listed off all of his injuries. This guy is held together by paper clips and Elmer's glue. He's missing an ear. He's missing teeth. He's got a fucked up skull. He's got a fucked up back. He's got fucked up knees. How he's still walking is crazy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Mankind taking a back body drop on the steel steps. Oh yeah. Mankind.
I have a friend whose favorite wrestler of all time is Mick Foley, and it's, you know, how can he not be everyone's favorite wrestler? Like he's just, I think of Foley and just all the crazy shit he's done, and we still have more crazy shit to go through in our retrospective. This is just
still, man.
I remember when I got the WWE Network for the first time, and I don't remember what pay-per-view it was. I think it was '96. It was In Your House. But man, Cactus Jack fought the Undertaker, and they did this nasty spot where Taker flung Cactus Jack off of the apron, and Foley went head first through the announce table, and his legs are just sticking out as the announce table flips over. And I'm just like, what the fuck?
Not good. Mankind took a pretty similar bump in this match. Kane hits a choke slam, and the Spanish announce table just crumbles into dust on the outside. One tombstone, and that's it. Kane, this was pretty much a 9-minute squash match. Just beats the ever-loving crap out of Mankind all over the Molson Center.
Mankind bumped for Kane. And another nasty spot he took where Kane just took Foley by the arm and then flung him back first onto concrete. Or maybe not even on the apron. I think it was off the top rope.
Yes. It was, very, very nasty landings. Mankind tried his best to make Kane look like a freaking killer, and he did. He absolutely did. Kane looked freaking intimidating, as he ever did growing up. And, I mean...
Nobody ever put anybody over like Foley did.
Not at all. Foley knew how to make legends out of Kane, make legends out of Randy Orton, and later on, we'll be talking about how he made a legend out of one Adam Copeland. But anyhow, it was a match. It was there. It wasn't really anything too, groundbreaking that Mick Foley ever did. But heck, there's you can kind of
stars for the bumps.
Yeah. I'll match it. I'll even go 2 1/4, man. I mean, I'll give Foley some extra bonus points there. But before we get to this next
was one of your 3 featured one-on-one matches, so it was something for sure.
Everything else was a Survivor Series match. But before I get to that 4th and final one of those, Michael Cole, in his first year with the Federation at this point, is backstage with Commissioner Slaughter and one Vince McMahon, who is suspiciously not on commentary on this show, as he would be throughout the entirety of 1997. Michael Cole just casually looks at Vince, and he asks him, I'm just going to ask you up front, who's going to win? And Vince looks him in the eye and says, I don't know. To be continued. Next up is the Nation of... Go ahead.
Oh wait, no, I think that happens after this match. I want to bring up the very awkward segment we got. I think leading into the next match.
The awkward segment. Oh man, I don't even remember.
Should we just talk about it now? Because it's really nothing. It's not anything important to the show. But they held a sweepstakes to a lucky fan who they had to mail their pay stub of Survivor Series to win a chance to eat dinner with a WWE superstar, and they selected the winner. And
oh my God, I know this one.
And Jerry Lawler, again, this is one of Jerry Lawler's innocent moments, but Jerry Lawler says, "Oh, congratulations! Which WWF superstar are you going to pick to take to dinner, and where are we going to go eat?" And the fan says, "Oh, I'm going to pick Stone Cold Steve Austin." And Jerry Lawler says, "Well, what about me?"
Steve Austin? What about me?
Yeah. And then Jerry Lawler says, "I was looking forward to. Where are we going to go eat?" And the fan just awkwardly laughs, and then the segment just ends.
Well, it's no
put that fan on the spot on live television.
It's no $1 Million Mania with Vince McMahon getting rickrolled on live TV, but I mean, it was pretty funny.
I watched every single one of those live as a teenager.
Oh my God, $1 Million Mania.
Oh, man.
Okay, so next up, Nation of Domination is coming out for a Survivor Series match. It's Farouk, Kama Mustafa, D'Lo Brown, and a very young Rocky Maivia. Don't think he's going to go anywhere in his career. They're going up against...
Yeah, now dubbed The Rock.
Yes, yeah. I think this is one of the first times he's been dubbed The Rock on live TV. But they're going...
Before we get into that, let's go into a little bit of a backstory. So the Nation of Domination was just basically... a black faction just led by a bunch of rebels. And it honestly, you look at the Nation, and there were a lot of stars in that faction that helped like propel their careers. You know,
Ron Simmons,
Mark Henry was in there, D'Lo Brown was in there, Ron Simmons was the leader, the first ever world heavyweight champion. And yes, you can thank the Nation for The Rock, because remember, just a couple years prior, Rocky Maivia was just this young, plucky babyface that was not getting over, believe it or not.
Literally a blue chipper.
The fans didn't like him. Yeah. So what did they do? They stripped off the ring gear. They made him shave his head. They took away part of his name, and they just called him The Rock. You know what? Back then, they probably just thought The Rock was going to be a gimmick for a short time until the Nation faded out. No.
Nah, he's not going to go anywhere.
Launched Rock's career.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Sarcasm
it's
aside.
Crazy just to think that they changed his name from Rocky Maivia to The Rock just for the gimmick, and now he's one of the biggest stars in entertainment history. Let me preface this now. The Rock started off in a faction. What's his daughter doing right now? She's in a faction in NXT.
Mm-hmm. She just joined the Schism, I believe, is Joe Gacy's stable. But the Nation is going up against the totally established stable of Ken Shamrock, Ahmed Johnson, and the WWF Tag Team Champions, the Legion of Doom, which is one of my favorite tag teams of all time. Love the theme music. Love the lighting.
Favorite tag team behind the Dudleys.
Love the shoulder pads. Love the entrance. Love the face paint. Just everything about their presentation is awesome. And I forgot that they were tag champions around that time.
You have LOD, who apparently I did not know. A lot of the fans did not like LOD. They thought it was a disgrace that they changed their names from the Road Warriors to LOD.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have I don't have a man in that fight. I didn't grow up with the LOD. I just love them no matter what. LOD, Road Warriors, whatever you want to call them. You have Ahmed Johnson, who was, for his time, was a solid mid-carder. Nothing really special there. He had his place in the company. Unfortunately, he's most famously known for having really bad promos in a WWF video game that got dubbed and got memed. I think
WWF Warzone. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Can't understand what the fuck he's saying. And the real star of this team, Ken Shamrock, being pushed like a motherfucker at this point.
Could you imagine if this guy became the WWF champion within a year? Man, how different things would have been. Shamrock was treated like a big star. The Rock was treated like a big star. He was treated like a massive heel. The crowd was chanting, "Die, Rocky, die. Rocky sucks." The Rock didn't forget that at all. But
and here's the thing. Nobody cares about Ahmed Johnson. In this particular feud, nobody cares about the Legion. This was about Shamrock versus the Nation, because that was the big feud going on at the time.
Let me put it this way for the younger viewers. Ahmed Johnson was pretty much like Bobby Lashley with no real ring skill. You know? Like
Actually, Ezekiel Jackson was our generation's Ahmed Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much to the point that in the 2012 Royal Rumble,
he got Ahmed Johnson chance. Oh yeah. No, 100%. And
but you know what? Ahmed was still a million times more over than Ezekiel Jackson.
Literally the exact same gimmick, though. The crowd saw right through it. But in any case,
but Ahmed was still over. He was still more over.
Yeah. So their leader, the nation's leader, Farouk, was eliminated very early, ironically, by his fierce rival Ahmed Johnson and his finisher, the Pearl River Plunge. The Rock actually also looked really great in this match. I believe he eliminated both Road Warriors in this match, which is really, really great. Really, really smart booking if you really look under the surface.
And he did, mainly because at the time the Road Warriors were feuding with the Legion of Doom. I'm sorry, did I just say they were feuding with themselves? Oh my God. It's been a long week, my friend. The Road Warriors were feuding with the New Age Outlaws, and the Outlaws came out. Billy Gunn had his face painted like a Road Warrior, and JR mentioned on commentary
that
I almost said it again. The new, because you know why I'm saying it? I'm thinking of Road Dogg, Road Warriors.
Yeah.
The New Age Outlaws stole the shoulder pads of the Legion of Doom, so they were coming out there just to distract them. It was long enough so the New Age Outlaws could get high up on the Road Warriors, and that's how they got eliminated. So they were, I'll give them credit for furthering that.
Rock pins him with an inside cradle, and it's down to the Rock and Ken Shamrock, which is a very familiar match if you watch WWF in 1998. Those two wrestled each other a lot. The Rock hits... Okay, I have a question for you. How jarring was it to see The Rock hit what would become the People's Elbow to absolutely no response? Yeah. That was so weird.
Crazy, isn't it?
But
it's still weird to watch Rock in the Nation and you know what's going to happen with him. It's like watching John Cena wrestle in the trunks. It's like the mega stardom that this guy is going to reach.
Yes. So
just like, no, we're still in his early parts of his career.
Yeah. There were some good near falls towards the end of this match, I will say. Shamrock makes his comeback, floats over an armbar into an ankle lock, and Rocky taps, and Shamrock is your sole survivor. This was the best Survivor Series elimination match on the show, and the second best match on this show overall. 2 3/4 stars, though. It wasn't the best.
I'm comfortable giving it a 3. It had the most excitement and it had the most build, and there was actually a story around this with Shamrock versus the Nation, but Shamrock couldn't fight them 4-on-1, so he had to get some dweebs to team up with him just so he could get to the Nation.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, there's nothing really totally offensive about the match that would really drive the star rating down. But next up, this is an interesting match, Tomas.
This isn't really about the match. It's about the angle. And again, some more real life stuff coming in. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin defending the Intercontinental Championship against Owen Hart.
Oh, flip him.
Rematch
flip
in
him.
SummerSlam.
Owen was the champion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
God, man, it's been a long week.
It's okay.
Austin is challenging Owen for the Intercontinental Championship. Backstory about this. Really real life stuff going into this. Let's rewind back to SummerSlam and the infamous match between Austin and Owen for the Intercontinental title, where Austin was also challenging. Owen hit a very, very, very snug pile driver onto Austin, which broke his neck on contact. How Austin was still able to finish the match. Hey, look,
barely.
I'm going to say this now. They should have called an audible. Owen should have just retained, but they still went through with the finish. And then Austin, and it's not his fault, the man was paralyzed, was somehow able to roll up Owen and win the Intercontinental title. Austin says he doesn't remember he doesn't remember doing that.
Yeah, and if you go back and watch it, even Austin himself admits that it was the worst roll-up probably in wrestling history. But given the circumstances...
But, a lot of people don't know, pre-97, Austin was a damn good ring wrestler. You go back to his matches in WCW, my favorite United States Championship match in history is Steve Austin versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at Spring Stampede 94. It's classic. And if you want to see Stone Cold Steve Austin actually wrestle, go watch that match. He puts on a clinic with Steamboat. But since Austin broke his neck, one, he had to relinquish the Intercontinental title the very next night on Raw. So what was the point of him winning it? When he came back to wrestle, his entire style had to change. No more grappling, no more of that in-ring technician stuff he was really good at. Now he had to be the striker. He had to be the brawler. He had to be, you know, most of his offense turned into punches, kicks, fez presses, maybe a suplex here and there, and a Stone Cold Stunner, all because of one botched powerbomb. And Austin has said in interviews, the only reason he resents Owen for that is that Owen never checked in on him. No phone calls, never visited him in the hospital. Apparently the story was Owen was so embarrassed, but Austin said all you had to do was pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And it would have been water under the bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very, very sad situation thinking about it. But yeah, I'm sure it's tough because it's tough thinking about it, especially since
Owen.
But that's why, because it's like what happened to Owen never should have happened in general. But it's like, damn, dude, like if he had hit that pile driver just like a little differently, Stone Cold probably could have had wrestling clinics all the way up to the end of the 2000s. Like his career probably would have
exactly
so much longer than it did.
When Austin is asked about this nowadays, he always says the same thing. He says, obviously, he's not mad now because of what happened to Owen. But he said at the moment he was mad only because Owen never checked in on him.
Totally. But this was not much of a match at all.
This is the grudge match.
Yeah. Not much of a grudge match. It was, it's crazy considering that Austin went in there like 3 months after breaking his neck like that. Yeah. Way too freaking early for him to do anything.
Was it Owen wearing a shirt that said Owen 316 just said I broke your neck?
Yep.
Was he doing that?
He sure was. Right, he sure was. Coming out with his trademark 2 Slammy awards that he won at the previous year's Slammies and said, I know it. I'm a winner. But
you know what? I have to bring this memory up about Owen because anytime we can talk about Owen, it is a treat. Everybody hates this match, but I loved it for one reason. I'm talking about correct me if I'm wrong, please. Royal Rumble 95, Brett versus Backlund in an I Quit match for the WWF
Oh, no,
title.
that was Survivor Series 94 is what you're thinking of. Brett versus Backlund.
Thank you. Brett versus Backlund. Nobody likes that match because they said Backlund never should have won the title off of Brett. That's another discussion for another time. But I loved that match because Owen's acting was superb. When Backlund had Brett in the cross-face chicken wing, which felt like for like 5 minutes, Owen is crying. And he's saying, no, don't hurt my brother. Don't do it. Our parents are in the audience. No, don't do it. And, you believed Owen. But when I think it was Stu who threw in the towel so Backlund would win the title. Immediately once that happened, Owen celebrating. He fucking got all of us. Seeing Owen work his match against a heel was always a delight. And he did it again in this show.
Oh, man, it was just so fun to hate the nugget, as the crowd called him, in character, of course. He comes out with that Owen 316 shirt, says, I just broke your neck. And I'm like, what a freaking prep boy jerk he is, So he comes out. Austin, this is not much of a match really at all. Austin's on offense pretty much for all of it. And you can very much tell that Stone Cold, with his neck and the condition it was in, very, very limited. Hits Owen pretty much with one stunner and pins him to regain the Intercontinental title, which is weird.
This was a grudge match for the fans, and it was a grudge match for Austin. Austin's back. He took back the title he never lost, and off to the races he goes. This was basically... This launched Austin into stardom because he would go on to win the Royal Rumble and then the WWF Championship, and the rest is history.
Took a couple more months off after defeating Owen Hart here. He would relinquish the Intercontinental Championship very infamously to The Rock And then there would be a segment where Austin tossed the IC belt off of a bridge, and The Rock would be very cross about that indeed.
Two-time Intercontinental Champion, and I don't understand why they had to put the title on him both times if he was just going to give it up.
Yeah. No, he never lost that Intercontinental title. So theoretically, Stone Cold Steve Austin should still be holding the Intercontinental Championship today. You know, he should be defending it. He never lost it.
He's been champion for 25 years. Eat your heart out, Roman Reigns.
Eat your heart out, San Martino. Eat your heart out, Backlund. Austin's 25-year reign as IC champion. Book it.
Now I just imagined Gunther sitting in a room, and then Austin gets on the door and says, "I heard you got my belt, bitch."
Well, with Austin, with rumors of Austin wrestling another match at WrestleMania next year, you know, it wouldn't surprise me.
No. Gunther will kill him. Gunther would kill him.
Yeah, no, not with Gunther. Not with Gunther. No, we're not gonna.
He would fucking murder him.
Oh, only in WWE 2K22 for sure. But okay, you ready?
Anywho, here we are.
This is probably the most famous match in wrestling history at this time, folks. It's the one match that we know this show for. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, WWF Championship, 18 months in the making. And we get the big match entrances as Bret and Shawn are walking backstage, and they get their big pops. Bret gets a huge pop from his fellow countrymen. And Tomas was asking.
But here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Shawn Michaels, the most despicable human on the face of the planet, not just in a wrestling ring, but behind the scenes as well. There are stories and stories of how much of a fucking prick Shawn Michaels was. He was an alcoholic. He was a drug addict. He treated everyone backstage with no respect whatsoever. Infamously, at SummerSlam 94, he was fighting Vader for the WWF Championship. And I guess Vader would not sell Michaels' offense. There is an infamous scene where Michaels is going to hit the elbow drop and Vader is supposed to move. Vader doesn't move, so Michaels just leaps off the top rope, stomps Vader in the chest, and says, "Fucking move." Vader said that Michaels told him, "If you ever do that again, I will get you fired." Vader went crying to Jim Cornette. That's why Jim Cornette hates Shawn Michaels. But no other beat did Michaels have bigger with Bret the Hitman Hart. And Shawn Michaels comes to the ring. He takes the Canadian flag, twists it up, shoves it right up his nose, wipes his nose clean of it, throws it on the ground, and starts dry humping it.
Yeah, you can see why Bret hated him, and that's just one reason. So where do you even begin with this feud? And I'm sure this has been covered on so many other pods and all that good stuff. I'm going to try and do it as best I can. We can trace this back to WrestleMania 12, when these two guys wrestled in an Iron Man match for the WWF title. One of the best WrestleMania main events in history. A lot of people consider it. Shawn went over. Bret really was not too keen about being the transitional champion from Diesel to Shawn, admittedly, because apparently he was like, I'm just going to be the guy who puts Shawn over. But it's like, at the same time, Shawn was going to be the guy who would put Austin over at WrestleMania 14. This happens with everybody. You know, JBL was going to be the guy that put John Cena over at WrestleMania. There's always going to be someone who loses to propel a new superstar.
And Bret was a 5-time WWF champion at this point. I don't think it was too much for him to sacrifice. But you know what? I think Bret mainly just did not want to drop the title to Shawn Michaels. And here we are. Well, here is the big story behind this match.
Yes. So here's the huge story. So this is a feud that had been built up like over 18 months. Bret and Shawn were saying stuff about each other that carried a lot of truth to it. Kind of drew the curtain back a little bit. And the rumor was Shawn Michaels would regain the WWF Championship at the Royal Rumble of 97. And the rumor was it was going to be him and Bret in a rematch at WrestleMania 13. Shawn claimed that he was injured and he would relinquish the WWF title, losing his smile. And there was a lot of animosity between him and Bret Hart from that point on, because Bret was like, Shawn didn't want to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
here comes the X factor into this. Why we were talking about WCW at this point, how they got Hogan and Hall and Nash and Savage and Warrior and Beefcake and Mr. Perfect. Ted Turner came up to Bret Hart and said, come work for me. He had more money. Bret didn't like his direction going into WWF. So Bret was going to leave WWF for WCW. And
what's the interesting part? What's the interesting part? Bret Hart, at one point or another, so Shawn Michaels said in one of his novels that when he was negotiating a new contract with Vince himself, one of his stipulations was that he would be the highest paid wrestler on the roster, not named The Undertaker, out of respect. So when Bret Hart got this fat 20-year contract where he's making $1 million a year, Shawn gets pissed now. And, Bret is like purposely burying him on the mic. Raw's going off the air while Bret is purposely like driving Shawn's name into the mud. Shawn is going back and saying Bret is just having some sunny days on the side. It's personal. It is legitimately personal between these two.
And again, you said it, 20-year contract, which meant, or was it 20 or was it 10?
It was a 20-year deal. 20-year deal. Bret was going to be a light.
So Bret was going to be signed with WWE until 2017.
Yep.
Which means when Jinder Mahal won the WWE title, Bret's contract was coming to an end. A 20-year deal. That's how badly Vince was willing to keep Bret around. But again, WCW had the money. Vince was like a trapped rat in a corner at this point, and Bret, threatened.
He basically had to pick
with the championship.
He basically had to pick because here's the big part. He knew that Shawn had potential to carry a lot more years, and looking back in hindsight, it's kind of haunting seeing the decision that Vince eventually makes. Bret was going on 40 years old around this point. Shawn Michaels was in his early 30s in 1997. So Vince probably saw a lot more mileage in a Shawn Michaels run than a Bret Hart run, and he knew that these two could not coexist. And he did not want Shawn going to WCW because rumor had it throughout 97, and the reason why Shawn had as big of an attitude problem as he did, he missed his click buddies. Hall and Nash were on the other side.
Exactly.
So could you imagine where Shawn leaves? Like,
Triple H swears up and down that he had nothing to do with this, but he had everything to do with it.
I don't believe that. Later. I don't believe that.
Yeah. Like I said, the screw job has a million different sides to it. What's the real side? Honestly, none of us are ever going to know unless you were in that locker room and you saw both Bret and Shawn's side. Again, we'll get to that when we get to that, but Bret was on his way out of the company and Bret still had the championship.
He did.
He said, okay, if you're leaving, you need to drop the title. Bret didn't want to drop the title to Shawn Michaels. And Bret, he basically petitioned for any other scenario. He said, I will drop it to Shawn Michaels the next night on Raw. You can strip me of the title. He just said, don't make me fucking drop it to him in my homeland at Survivor Series. Anything but that. And apparently these guys were fighting until the day of the pay-per-view. They still had not come up with a finish in this match the day of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, so, and another big reason why Bret was insistent on this is because of one conversation that he had with Shawn. And it was a miracle that Shawn even was the special guest referee for Bret's match at SummerSlam, because everybody knew how much these two hated each other. So now here they were working together, and here they are with a big main event. Essentially a heel versus heel match. And when Bret knew that he and Shawn were going at it, he tried to make peace with him. And he was like, listen, I'm willing to do business with you. I'm willing to put you over, and I'm going to keep you safe, and I'm going to be professional when the time comes. Bret claims that Shawn's response was very interesting, to say the least. Apparently, what Bret said, Shawn's response was, and Shawn claims to not remember this, but he was like, I appreciate that, but just know that I would not do the same for you. And that was the kicker for Bret, where he's like, this son of a bitch, I am not going to put him over anymore. So that's why this whole
guys need,
apparently.
You guys need to understand that there is an entire DVD dedicated to Bret versus Shawn. And again, 2010, they finally buried the hatchet and they were actually able to coexist and sit in the same room while they talked about their entire rivalry, which is crazy.
So fascinating.
I recommend you guys go check it out. It is so fascinating. But again, 97, they want to fucking kill each other. Brett's on his way out. Vince doesn't want him to leave with the title because he remembers what Alundra Blaze did with the women's title, trashing it on TV, and he couldn't even risk Brett even showing up to Nitro with the WWF Championship
not at all
over his shoulder. There is animosity. It's craziness. It's absolute insanity. Again, it's the craziest rivalry in professional wrestling. And the fact that these two were able to put on a pretty damn good
match of the night
is very telling.
Good Lord.
It was excellent.
And
these
the
guys
match
are brawling all over the ring. They're throwing each other into steel posts. They're throwing each other into the set. And this is all before the match even starts.
And I love how Brett puts the figure 4 on the ring post. That was always one of my favorite Bret Hart moves anytime I would go back and watch his stuff. And how Shawn was selling the figure 4 was just second to none. And you could tell that this was a personal rivalry because they were fighting each other,
hate each other
around ringside through the crowd. They're even out there, and there's a bunch of officials by the entranceway, and Vince is trying to get them in the ring. Vince was a commentator around this point, so it was kind of jarring for people to see him like in this executive position at this time.
And again, Shawn Michaels is my favorite professional wrestler of all time, but Bret Hart is the greatest technical wrestler of all time. And these two, they fucking hate each other, but they have magic every single time they stepped in the ring together. And Shawn Michaels is so fucking weird. It is my life DVD. He chose an Intercontinental Championship match he had with Bret on an episode of Raw. Out of all the classics they had, just like how he chose the boot camp brawl.
He probably didn't want to pick the match where the screw job happened because let's be honest, Brett's tired of talking about the screw job. Shawn's tired of talking about the screw job. They buried the hatchet, but do you want to just get right to it? What was the finish?
Okay, here we go. They had an excellent match, a 4-star match. It was very fun to watch. And here we get to the craziest finish in wrestling history. Shawn Michaels in Bret's homeland, his home country of Canada, puts on the sharpshooter onto Bret Hart.
Yep.
Earl Hebner, he's asking Bret, do you want to tap? Do you want to tap? Immediately rings the bell.
Yep.
Here's the thing. Michaels, Hebner, and Vince were the only ones in on this.
And Gerald Briscoe.
Ring announcer, confused as fuck. Yeah.
Gerald Briscoe was in on it. Triple H was in on it.
Vince, Michaels, Hebner. JR didn't know what the fuck was going on. Jerry Lawler didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Jerry Lawler didn't say one word when the bell rang.
No, but JR was just like astonished. So bell rings. Bret did not tap. Bret did not tap. So Michaels spills out to the ring. Hebner gives him the championship. The ring announcer very awkwardly says, your winner and new World Wrestling Federation champion, Shawn Michaels. Hebner's out there. Triple H is out there. And Bret, he just leans over the ropes, looks at Vince, goes, and hawks a fucking loogie in Vince's face.
Yep. And Vince deserved every bit of that. But one thing you're missing.
Yeah.
So Earl Hebner was the referee of this matchup here. Earl Hebner, senior official. And Bret actually handpicked Earl Hebner to be the referee of this contest, mainly because he trusted Earl more than anybody. He knew that Earl would not screw him. And the night of the pay-per-view was, I believe he was approached by Gerald Briscoe, and he was told the plan. Basically, screw Bret Hart or you're fired, was the ultimatum. And when the bell rang, Earl Hebner did not present the championship to Shawn Michaels. He bolted out of the arena because he knew that Bret was probably going to kill him. He ran away as fast as he could to a waiting car, and he was gone.
So
he was out of there.
Hebner's gone. Michaels, Triple H, and Vince McMahon are walking out, and then rightfully so, the fans get mad. You see fans trying to take a swing at Shawn Michaels. There's a fan hitting Michaels with the sign. Here comes the trash. They start pelting Michaels with trash, and JR really has nothing else to say but, well, thank you for joining us, Survivor Series. Good night, everyone.
Shawn Michaels, another thing about this little pay-per-view ending here, Shawn was acting his heart out. He was acting like he had no idea what had happened. He was acting pissed off. He took the championship from the timekeeper, and he was like he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
He was totally in on it. And one thing the cameras did not catch after the show went on the air was Bret throwing TV monitors down there. And he stands in the middle of the ring in front of his home country, and he says, WCW with his finger. Damn.
So we got into the what. Now we go into the why. Why did this happen? Simple enough. Vince didn't want Bret to leave with the WWF title. He insisted Bret drop the title to Michaels, and he said, Bret's going to drop this title whether he likes it or not. So he told Earl, the minute you see him in the sharpshooter, you ring the bell.
Mm-hmm. And Vince was at ringside. Vince was at ringside shouting, ring the fucking bell. I mean, how can you defy the boss's commands here? You know?
Put yourself in Bret's situation. That easily has to be the most embarrassing moment of your life.
Yeah, because he was a WWF lifer.
Again. Yeah.
Like
his relationship with Vince, his relationship with Hebner.
He didn't want to leave. Yeah. He didn't want to leave the Federation. That one moment. Just done. But
so again, you talk about wrestling with shadows, and you don't see what happens after the show. After the show, Bret runs to the back and he starts screaming at people. He wants to kill Vince. He goes up to Triple H, and what does Triple H say? I had nothing to do with it, Bret.
I don't buy that for a second.
I had nothing to do with it.
Hunter, God bless you.
It's Triple H had nothing to do with it.
God bless Hunter Hearst Helmsley and all he's doing for the business right now, but I don't buy for a second that he wasn't in on this. And he was busy. So as Bret was like in the dressing room, you know, having a private conversation with Vince and punching him out, giving him a black eye, you know, like Joe Briscoe even told Vince at least to take one from Bret. And Bret hammers Vince, as he says on Dark Side of the Ring, with the most beautiful uppercut you ever saw in your life. And Bret even asks Shawn in the backstage area, he's like, so you're saying you weren't in on it? And I swear to God, I wasn't in on it, Bret. I'm sorry. And I'm like, Shawn, you knew about it. You knew about it, dude.
Again, if Triple H wasn't in on it, then why was he at ringside?
Yeah, and as all that was going on, he was busy lying to Bret Hart's wife in the hallway, directly outside, saying, I knew nothing about that. And I'm like, you were probably the one who came up with the idea, dude.
It's, again, the craziest thing to ever happen in professional wrestling history. As a kid, growing up and just hearing, I didn't know what the Montreal Screwjob was. So infamously, was it the next night on Raw? Maybe it was the week after Raw. They interviewed Vince about the whole situation. And, you know, Vince said infamously, at the end of the day, Vince did not screw Bret. Bret screwed Bret. And that led to a decade of the fans chanting, you screwed Bret, every time they saw Vince. As a kid, I had no idea what that meant. So when I would see old footage of Bret, whenever I would play as Bret on the video games, and I heard you screwed Bret, I remember me and my brother just went along with it. We had no idea what that meant. We just knew every time Vince was in Canada or anything that had to do with the Hearts, he would get chanted, you screwed Bret at you. And that's, you know, again, Vince did screw Bret. And again, this created this whole sonic boom ripple effect, because after that, Vince knew he was hated. He was hated by the entire world.
Yes.
So Vince said, if the fans want to hate me, I'm going to give them a fucking reason to hate me. He was no longer a commentator. He revealed himself as the owner and chairman of the WWF, and he will go on to be the greatest heel of all time.
Yeah, so by that logic, does Vince McMahon, while he's sitting there in his retirement home in bumfuck wherever he is right now, does he regret screwing Bret Hart? Absolutely not. Like, he would probably do it again in a heartbeat.
No.
Like, knowing how that man operates, he would probably definitely do it again. So that leads
what happened to Shawn Michaels next is the sheer definition of karma. At that Royal Rumble in '98, he fought The Undertaker in a casket match.
Broke his back.
He took a bad bump on the back of the casket, broke his fucking back. Retired him for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's why, in case you guys are wondering, that's why the Iron Sheik says, I'm going to break your back and make you humble. Because that's what happened to Shawn Michaels. He broke his back, and now he's a whole new different person.
Yeah, he's a better person.
Brett after that, yeah, he went to WCW. He had the worst career ever in WCW, including an infamous botch at the end of Starrcade 97. He would continue to wrestle until about 99. He took a bad kick from Goldberg that concussed him. Brett could never wrestle again.
Yeah.
Should Brett have ever gone to WCW? Absolutely not.
No. I mean, he would become He won the United States Championship 5 different times, and he would become the WCW champion towards the end of his run. But then Goldberg hits him with one errant kick to the head, and that's the end of Bret Hart's career.
Again, he won the United States Championship 5 times, and he was only there for a year.
Yeah. And keeping in mind, Vince Russo was not booking WCW around this point.
Yeah. He was only active for a year. I think he made some appearances in 2000, but those don't count because he couldn't wrestle. He was done at that point. So what happens after that, you may ask, between the years of the WCW buyout in 2001 all the way until about 2006? Not a single word was mentioned about Brett, the Hart family. It was just very awkward tension. The fans always reminded Vince, but they never talked about Brett. It wasn't until 2006 when WWE made the Bret Hart documentary that Brett's name started to come up again. And then
fantastic DVD, by the way.
And then, it sparked the whole Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon feud over a DVD.
Yeah, and Brett actually worked very closely with WWE on that piece, and he was like, I want to handpick the matches. I want to have a say in what is shown on here. And it turned out one of the best DVD products I think they've ever put out. But they wouldn't make amends until what I'm assuming you were about to say was in 2010, when Brett and Vince would wrestle at 26, which is a bad match.
So
more about the payback and the angle.
Let's fast forward to 2010 in January, where WWE, the only good thing to come out of the guest host era, where WWE announced that Bret Hart was going to be the guest host on Monday Night Raw. One of the most anticipated episodes of Raw in history. And what you expected exactly happened. Bret came out to a thunderous ovation. He got in the ring with Shawn Michaels, and he shook his hand.
Yeah.
13 years in the making. Bret would go into the Hall of Fame that year, and Bret and Vince would have a feud going into WrestleMania. Was it a good match? No. Was the build-up amazing? Yes.
It was entertaining.
If you're a fan in 97, if you're a fan in 97, of course you want to see Bret Hart beat the hell out of Vince McMahon with a chair and a crowbar. And that's what we got. And Bret, to this day, has a good relationship with WWE.
He does, which is crazy. Yeah, it shows you anything can happen in this business, even on the darkest moment possible. So did the Montreal Screwjob need to happen? No. Could it have been handled better? It was agreed upon that the match was going to end in a double DQ or a schmoz. Shortly after the sharpshooter gimmick, Hart Foundation was going to run down after DX ran down, and then all hell was going to break loose, right? And then Bret was planning on surrendering the WWF Championship the next night, and then it was going to be held up as vacant or whatever. And this just really spiraled out of control in terms of karma. Let me just say, if the Montreal Screwjob didn't happen, Shawn Michaels probably wouldn't have broke his back. Bret Hart would probably be a WWF lifer. Owen Hart probably would not have gone up on that catwalk.
No. And Vince would not have become the Mr. McMahon character we all came to hate.
And he does not regret the Screwjob for making him that character. Now, this begs me to the big question, Tomas. Whose fault do you think it is? Because a lot of people blame different people. A lot of people take different sides. A lot of people like me, I side with Bret more so because he's the victim in this whole situation. there's some people
But
who
like we said before,
go ahead.
like we said before, Vince was like a rat trapped in a corner, and his last star was on his way out the door. And Vince was like a crying child clutching onto his leg, begging him not to go. So out of rage, I think Vince said, like, fine, you want to go? I'm going to fuck you on your way out. And he did.
Yeah. Yeah. And Bret was willing to do business, but a lot of people blame Shawn.
How crushed and defeated and deflated Vince was after he lost Randy Savage. He was like that after he lost Savage. Could you imagine how he was feeling when he knew Bret was on his way out?
He was probably in desperation mode. So he needed to do something that would get people talking. This certainly got the wrestling world talking. It's got a couple of geeks like us talking about it 25 years after it happened. But let me just also say this. For those of you who believe the Montreal Screwjob was a work, that was never an idea that I subscribed to. Absolutely not. Because if it was a work, Bret and Shawn would be the best of friends, pretending to hate each other in real life, which is a total complete facade. Okay. Like even fancier than the Undertaker putting on a facade and pretending that he's this character. But the Montreal Screwjob.
You know what I learned? You know what I learned after listening to so many podcasts about the whole All Out situation? I learned that a work is supposed to benefit somebody in some way. You look at the Montreal Screwjob, and how the fuck does that benefit anybody? Bret gets embarrassed in his hometown and is out the door. Shawn Michaels, fans were trying to throttle him on his way out. How does that benefit him?
Yeah, people were asking for Vince's head. Like,
Vince got spat on. You know,
not good.
Money in the Bank 2011, when Christian spit in Randy Orton's face. That was so Randy Orton would get so angry that he would get himself disqualified so Christian could win the title. Why would Vince go up to Bret and say, hey, we're going to do this screwy finish, and I want you to huck a loogie in my face? Why would he do that?
Why would he take a punch from Bret in the backstage area while the cameras were not rolling? It wasn't a work.
You know, Hebner didn't move on to be a heel referee.
No. Earl Hebner, talk about someone whose back is against the wall. He has to pretty much go and betray his friend, all for, like, you know, financial stability for life. It's
you know, you talk about works. Again, this same year, Bret's infamous promo in the cage, where he went off on a tangent, dropping bullshit. Exactly.
It's spoofed so many times.
Yeah, Bret because he was trying to turn heel at that point.
Yeah, well,
the screw job benefited nobody.
So let me clarify. Vince was trying to turn Bret heel, mainly because he saw some other like big babyface stars on the rise. And Bret did not want to turn heel. He basically told Vince, "Let's compromise. I'm going to be a heel in the United States of America, and anywhere other than, you know, the land of the free and the home of the brave, I'm going to be the folk hero. Coming home to Canada, I'm going to come in and be like, you know, I don't want to compare it to like Cody Rhodes in the United States right now or anything like that, but it's Bret was going to be a folk hero anywhere else."
You're really going to expect people to boo Bret in Canada?
No, absolutely not.
That's like asking people to boo Shinsuke Nakamura in Japan. That's like asking for people to boo Rey Mysterio in Mexico.
That's like people. That's like asking people to boo Bayley in San Jose. It doesn't work. You know,
that's like when they went to Montreal and they asked you to boo Sami Zayn.
Never gonna happen. Never gonna happen. But
no. So again, it's so wacky and crazy. And again, we could spend a whole 3-hour podcast just talking about the screw job and the Bret and Shawn Michaels situation. Again, we can't really do it justice. Go watch the Bret versus Shawn documentary. I'm pretty sure it's on Peacock.
Go watch Wrestling with Shadows. Go watch the Dark Side of the Ring piece that they did on it. It is still one of the biggest like blunders that happened in wrestling, but it's still one of the most talked about backstage incidents that's ever happened in wrestling. That has never been replicated until a couple months ago with the Brawl Out scandal. It's the lines between
like
reality and kayfabe have never been blurred like they have been with the Montreal Screwjob.
Yeah. I remember as a kid when we were watching wrestling together, and my dad saw a promo for the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD, and he got so excited for that. And we got it for him for Christmas. So when he got excited, I said, "How come you want this DVD?" And he said, "Let me tell you about the Ultimate Warrior. He was a fantastic wrestler, but one night at a house show, he went up to Vince and said, 'You're going to give me money right now or I'm not doing the show.' So Vince said the show must go on. He gave Warrior the money. Warrior did the match. But when Warrior got to the backstage area, Vince said, 'Don't you ever demand money from me. You're fired.'" And I remember thinking that was the wildest thing I've ever seen.
That was SummerSlam 1991.
The screw job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If I heard about the screw job as a kid and was explaining that, I would have been traumatized.
Yeah. Crazy, crazy shit, man. But it's an incident that didn't need to happen, but it's still one that will probably forever be talked about for all eternity by wrestling fans far and wide. But other than that, Survivor Series 1997, other than this, is not a good show. It's,
you know what?
What's that?
You're probably not going to like hearing this. I don't like drama in my personal life, but do I love watching it from afar? So I'm going to give it a 7. The whole show, other than the main event, gets a 6, but I'm going to give it a 7 because of the whole fiasco at the end. Fucking wild. And with a good wrestling match attached to it.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with, like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really like the undercard all that much, so I'll probably give it like a 6. 6 is probably being generous, but yeah, that's all right.
That's fair. Catch me with my popcorn bucket in the corner, listening to too many podcasts about Brawl Out.
Yes.
Watching too many documentaries.
No, better yet.
I love Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring is fascinating, but catch me with a big plate full of muffins listening to all the Brawl Out stuff. Too soon?
This podcast is not brought to you by Mindy's Bakery. We are not sponsored by Mindy's. Don't come for us, CM Punk. I know you got a lot of free time on your hands right now.
It's like
Mindy's would go out of bakery if it wasn't for Punk.
It's a great place in Chicago if you're looking for like pastries and baked goods. I'm working on it, but folks, I think that about wraps it up.
Would go out of business if it wasn't for Punk. Oh my God. This Saturday is AEW Full Gear, by the way. We will be reviewing that the next week, and afterward is Survivor Series War Games.
Yes.
We're very looking forward to.
11 fucking matches on Full Gear, motherfuckers.
And probably 3 pre-show matches that they'll announce on Rampage.
Yeah. He's so excited, clearly, but I'm excited for War Games as well. And then our next retro pod probably is going to be Great American Bash 04, which is not a very good show. Not looking forward to that, but no. 2004 is a rough go for the rest of the retro, but folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Leave us your thoughts on the Montreal Screwjob down below. Like, what do you think happened behind the scenes? Whose side do you take on this one? Because this could be talked about for hours.
And why
is
it Goldberg's fault?
Why Goldberg?
Tell us all your thoughts, and then tell us why it was Goldberg's fault. I'm just going to assume you're one of Bret Hart's 77 alternative accounts.
Oh my God. Anyhow, guys, thank you so much. Subscribe if you're new. See you guys next time.